Thanks, Ben. Oh, the recording started. Thanks, Ben. Morning, everyone. As Ben said, I'm Vicky Cormie, Head of Service for Environment and Waste Commissioning at the County Council. Amongst other things, within my service area, we're responsible for managing the delivery of the Council's environmental commitments. Our current energy system needs to change to meet the challenges of climate change, embed energy security, and create a system that can tackle increasing fuel prices, prevent fuel poverty, and the reliance on fossil fuels. Community energy can play a part in a new energy system. It's an exciting, emerging sector and valuable contributor to net zero obligations across the UK. Here at the County Council, we're committed to addressing the complex challenges associated with reducing emissions. The GreenerFuture project aims to create a sustainable environment for coordinated and impactful net zero delivery across Leicestershire. Along with project partners, we've secured over £2.5 million worth of funding through Innovate UK to enable and mobilise net zero delivery working within the community energy sector. The project's expertise spans various sectors, allowing for a collaborative approach to energy planning that can part be delivered by the community energy sector. It'll demonstrate to other local authorities in the UK an approach that they can learn from and replicate. It's an opportunity for you to join the community energy sector in Leicestershire to deliver new renewable energy projects and energy efficiency measures that can help meet our net zero targets. The GreenerFuture project is expected to transform the trajectory of carbon reduction across the county, with benefits continuing long after the project's completion and have a lasting impact on Leicestershire's journey towards net zero. That's it from me. I hope that you have a useful and informative session this morning. So I'll pass back over to Ben.
Thanks, Vicky. Right, okay, on to a little bit of interactivity. Sarah, I think you've got a little poll that you're going to do.
Hi everyone, yeah, I've just put a link to the poll in the chat, and bear with me, I'm just going to share my screen. So what we're asking everybody is, how much do you know about community energy? And you might be a complete expert, you might know a certain amount, you might have some experience of projects, or you might know little or nothing. And we're just really keen to get a sense of that before we explain what we're doing for the project. Okay, any more? I think we seem to have stopped at that point. Oh, there's a few more. So yeah, so it's looking like we've got half the people in the room know a certain amount, but some of you with very little knowledge. So Laura will be able to speak to that in the next session.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, that'd be great, Laura, if you could then tell us a little bit more about community energy, maybe fill in some of the gaps and let people know what's happening on a national basis. And then I'll talk a little bit about a local basis, so at least you'll have more of a sort of like a background and an understanding of what's going on. So yes, Laura, over to you.
Hi everyone, it's good to see you. Sarah, could you give a wave? You can see my screen. As like you are one of the participants I can see. Yeah, excellent. Okay. Yes, my name's Laura Wilson. I'm Head of Pathways at Community Energy South. Why Community Energy South is delivering a project in Leicestershire, I'll come to in a bit. But I'm just here to give a bit of an overview about community energy. As the poll suggests, this is possibly a collection of people who have who are novices or maybe even beginners in community energy. So hopefully this won't be repeating what you already know. So we'll just start with a bit of an introduction to the whole concept of community energy, because it's quite a broad term and it means different things to different people, but it's a bit of a mouthful. But we kind of encapsulate community energy as any energy project or scheme or movement really that is wholly or partly controlled by the local community and has wider community impact. So very much led by people and groups and organisations in the community in which they serve. Community is quite a loose term as well. It can mean your parish, your local area, your community centre, or we work with community energy groups that indeed cover the whole district or county. But the point is that they are people-led and they deliver projects in those areas. So we think community energy is great, and has a key role to play in the transition towards net zero, understanding that communities need to be a key stakeholder in the delivery of net zero. Community energy groups tend to be funded through a mixture of grants, community finance, which is a form of sort of community share raise, which I think Ben will touch on later, and philanthropic funding. And when we talk about community energy, there are kind of two main strands that we focus on and that we work with. We've got powering up projects, which energy generation projects, basically community-owned solar on rooftops, community-owned wind turbines, which hopefully are coming back a little bit more. There was an announcement yesterday that the sort of planning restrictions are being lifted on wind. So the powering up projects refer to those sorts of energy generation projects, allowing people to generate energy locally, either to feed into the grid or to a building. And then we've got powering down projects, which is people coming together to deliver energy advice, free and impartial energy advice in their communities. So really helping to enable community resilience. What are the benefits of community energy? Why are we here? Well, if we're looking at those energy generation projects, it leads to an increase in renewable energy generation, which obviously impacts on our net zero targets. As I discussed, community energy projects can be funded through community energy shares, whereby people invest in local energy projects, and that means energy investment stays locally instead of it being delivered by multinational companies where the finance is not local. It leads to community benefit funds, so any profit arising or surplus arising from community energy funds can be invested back into the community locally where it's most needed. A really key thing about community energy is it encourages community-led action on climate change. It really helps people see by coming together they can deliver tangible projects, and it really helps people to understand that they can make a difference locally, which is a really good motivator. And community energy allows projects to be done by people. You're not doing it to people. These programs that we're talking about, the sort of big changes that we need to make to move towards net zero, work best when we have community buy-in. This is a bit of a theme that we'll touch on later, because around sort of shared ownership of larger solar schemes, if it's partly owned by the community, you've got that community buy-in, which means there might be a certain improved levels of acceptance. Community energy projects, certainly in the early stages, tend to be led by volunteers, and they sort of provide volunteering and work experience opportunity, leading to improved training and skills within those communities. So really community energy allows for a sort of improved community cohesion, people coming together to deliver projects in their area. And that's very powerful when you're trying to tackle something as big as climate change. So just to give a bit of an overview of the community energy sector in the UK, it's still relatively niche, I'll be honest, compared to other countries like Denmark or Germany, where up to 50% of some of their energy infrastructure is owned by the community through energy cooperatives. In this country, it's around sort of 68 megawatts, which is less than 1% of our energy infrastructure that's community owned. However, it is growing. There is around 500 community energy organisations in the UK, with 58,000 members. That means 58,000 people belonging to those cooperatives or community benefit societies that are delivering projects. So it's not insignificant, and as I said, it is growing. There are, I referred to the sort of powering up and the powering down elements of community energy, but other community energy groups are doing sort of more innovative things, like working on car clubs, which Ben might be talking about later, and developing low carbon heat networks and sort of solar buying clubs. So community energy groups can be quite flexible and respond to the needs of their community. You might have noticed that there was an election last week, and I just want to raise this because what was in the Labour Party manifesto and what I think is being moved forward at a pace is really a fantastic opportunity for community energy. So there is a pledge to develop a new publicly owned UK energy company, which can really supercharge the delivery of renewable technologies and also energy efficiency programs across the country. Key plans for this include the implementation of a local power plan, and there's a promise to offer grants to local authorities and community groups to develop community-owned, community-led renewable generation projects, which really presents a fantastic opportunity, and we are right at the forefront of this now in Leicestershire through the programme that Ben is going to explain. So there, as I mentioned earlier as well, within this GB Energy manifesto or plan, there is specific reference to the provision of communities partnering with large-scale community development to co-deliver schemes. So, for example, we are seeing more and more large-scale commercial developers coming forward saying, we want to develop this solar farm in this area. We want the community to be involved and own a part of that. We're going to see more of that going forward. So this is a fantastic opportunity. Just to talk very briefly about Community Energy South. We are Community Energy South, but we are now working across the country because we are now one of the leaders in helping local authorities grow and expand the community energy sector in their area. So we really support the development of groups and help local authorities understand the value of community energy. We provide mentoring, training, and skill building for community energy and help bring together communities to develop projects like I've described, those powering up projects, energy generation projects, and the powering down projects, helping communities deliver energy advice in there. We are thinking of changing our name because we think Community Energy South is now a bit of a misnomer. So I just wanted to talk very briefly about community energy in Leicestershire. Ben is obviously going to talk about GreenFuture Community Energy, which is the leading community energy group in Leicestershire. But as far as we know, it's GreenFuture and Harbour Energy who have delivered a couple of community and solar projects in their area. And that's pretty much it as far as we know. What we do know is community energy creates more community energy. We've seen this in other areas of the country where once you light a spark and really help move community energy forward by developing new projects, raising awareness of community energy, it really stimulates the growth in that area. You get communities, neighbouring communities going, I want some of that, what can I do? And it really helps motivate people. We found this in East Sussex when Community Energy South started out with a group called Avesco, which is based in Lewes. They started around 10-15 years ago developing community-owned solar on key buildings in the town, and it really piqued interest from other communities like in Brighton and across the south coast. And now I think there is around 10 groups even within East Sussex that are delivering these sorts of projects. So by helping kickstart the sector in an area, it really can help move it forward. Just to speak a little bit about the sorts of people and skills that are needed in community energy, I mentioned that certainly in the beginning, community energy projects and organisations are volunteer-led. They can go through sort of progression as they grow and develop, able to build that momentum and sort of track record and get extra grants in to help support sort of paid role. But in the beginning, it does tend to rely on volunteers. And a whole range of skills are needed to support those projects, you know, from communications, which is very key, particularly around social media in this day and age. If you have an understanding of sort of energy systems, engineering, how solar systems work, that's a real advantage. But other softer skills like administration, keeping member records up to date, that kind of thing, helping with financial modelling of projects. But even if it's just sort of boots on the ground and helping a community energy organisation identify potentially suitable buildings in their area, these are all really key skills that are needed. So a whole range of people and skills are required. And if you're thinking of getting involved and you think I haven't got any of those skills, I really encourage you to just put your hand up. I think anyone can get involved. There is a place for everybody, because many community energy groups are there just to serve their community, as I said. I just want to talk a little bit about energy champions as an example of one way in which volunteers can get involved in community energy groups, and one of the benefits that community energy groups can bring to that area. So we use energy champions to mean sort of enthusiastic local volunteers who are helping to raise awareness of what people could do within their homes to reduce their energy consumption, and are a really good way in which you can start that sort of presence within your local community. The great thing about energy champions and community energy groups is they provide free and impartial advice. There's so much misinformation around about energy efficiency measures and renewable technologies. You know, there's negative stories all the time about electric vehicles, heat pumps, insulation, but there's also a lot of mis-selling. You know, energy companies try to sell you stuff. The great thing about community energy groups is that they are free and impartial, and that they can be a really trusted source of information in their area. Whilst we're not saying that they can provide really technical advice specifically, they can provide a really good introduction and set households on a pathway, signpost them to other areas, other professional agencies or support agencies. It could be a really good signposting agencies to any grants, support they may be entitled to that will help them reduce their energy bills, help them move out of fuel poverty, but also, you know, provides that base level advice about things like heat pumps. Energy advice can be delivered in a variety of ways, like energy cafes, where you sort of set up in a public space or a library and people can drop in and talk to you, or even as the sort of more advanced community energy groups in this area provide home energy visits. Energy advice and energy champions is one of the things we're going to be looking at in this programme. So if that interests you as well, we're here to help train you up and set you on a sort of delivering programmes or projects in your area. I just wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of case studies for community energy organisations, the really successful ones, the one we think are things to aspire to through this programme. And there is opportunity to reach these sorts of dizzy heights. But this one is a low carbon hub in Oxfordshire, which has been going around 10 years. So low carbon hub covers the whole of Oxfordshire. It's a community benefit society. So that's a form of cooperative. And their mission is to develop a decentralised, local-owned renewable energy infrastructure for the county, and they've been very successful in this. To date, they've got 55 solar rooftop projects on schools, community buildings, businesses, industrial factories, and they've even got a solar farm as well. And they employ more than 20 people. But they started out as a small group at one point, and they've grown to cover the whole county. But what they've done as well, which I think this is a really great approach, is that they've developed a community network across the county, which encompasses community groups like transition groups, parish council groups, you know, climate action groups, and they support them through training and providing them with expert advice in helping them to find out what they can do in their area. They don't necessarily, these individual groups don't necessarily deliver projects like community energy solar, but they help harness support in their local area and maybe pass those bigger projects over to low carbon hub for them to develop. But it's really this peer-to-peer mentoring and support for the whole community, which I think is a fantastic approach. So the community groups themselves can become members of the low carbon hub, so they can become a member for £1, which gives them voting rights at the AGM, so they can help control the direction of low carbon hub, and they can also have someone sitting on the board of directors, which gives them that extra influence over how they develop this community network. And then the other case study I wanted to highlight, specifically around the energy advice, was Energise Sussex Coast, which is in Hastings in East Sussex. I think they've been going for around 10 years, and they're one of the leading organisations in delivering that free, impartial and trusted home energy advice. They have a very strong community presence and track record, and they work with the district councils and other agencies, funding from those agencies to sort of deliver retrofit advice, home energy advice, and help highlight grants that are available to households. And it also has a handyman service which offers free energy saving measures into sort of fuel poor households, like draft proofing and radiator panels. And because they're so embedded in the community, they're able to target areas where most support is needed, and really help provide that link between those sorts of agencies that provide grants to the local community, and have delivered some fantastic results. I'm going to leave it there and hand back over to Ben. No, I'm going to move on to the survey now. Shall I cover the survey now, Sarah? Apologies.
It's Ben next.
Ben next. Okay, I'll come on to that survey then. So I'll stop sharing and hand over to Ben. Hope that's given you an overview of community energy in the UK and given a flavour of the sorts of projects that community energy delivers. And now I'll pass over to Ben to give a background to Green Fox Community Energy and talk in more detail about what we're doing in Leicestershire.
Thanks, Laura. That's great. I especially like the low carbon hub approach of being able to build communities up to help deliver community energy. I think that's a particularly good example. Let me just share my screen and we'll get going. No, that's not what I was wanting to share. Never mind, let's try again. Sarah, can you see that?
That looks good to me, Ben. You just need to present.
I will. Okay, smashing. There we go, smashing. All right, thanks everybody. I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about, Laura touched on what was happening in Leicestershire, but a little bit more about Green Fox and a little bit more about other initiatives. So the Green Fox came out of the Transition Towns movement. If any of you can remember the Transition Towns movement back in 2012, it's still going now, and this is one of the projects that came out of it, specifically trying to tackle energy, and it was really set up to facilitate the increase of community-owned energy, community-owned renewables in Leicester and Leicestershire. So it's geographically based. It's probably best known for working with Hinckley Academy, replacing their old oil boilers with biomass boilers and providing sustainable heat to the school. You can see the little pictures I put at the bottom of the slide. The sort of before and after is always good to see. And you have get rid of an old boiler and you have the new shiny boiler in there. And to fund the capital installation, Green Fox raised around £860,000 in community shares, with over 200 people investing in those shares. And remember, when you invest in the shares, you become a member of the cooperative. It's a democratic organisation with one member and one vote. Over 50% of the investors came from Leicester and Leicestershire. That's really important to us because we're trying to keep the money within the local community rather than a larger organisation taking the money out of the local community, indeed out of the UK sometimes. In this particular project, investors were offered 7% return on investment and the repayment of their capital over 20 years. So you will usually get something like that model with a community energy project. The income for the business model comes from the cooperative selling the heat to the school, and the project saved the school an estimated £80,000 per year in their energy bills and a significant 500 tonnes of carbon of CO2 as it went from oil to a wood chip. There's a huge saving in carbon there. Okay. So other initiatives in Leicestershire, Laura touched on Harbour Energy. I think that's a really interesting one because, again, that was established in 2015. And so around the same time as Green Fox, and this thing about a community organisation helping another community organisation, we certainly did that. It started as a community benefit society, and it installed 170 kilowatt array, ground mounted array. There it is on the right hand side of solar PV, and that's the largest community energy solar PV project in Leicestershire. That project offered a 5% return on investment, and that's pretty much the going rate now actually for community investment shares. It was repayment over 20 years. Similar to the heat project I've just described, solar projects invariably sell their electricity to an organisation, sometimes the organisation that is hosting the electricity if it was on a roof. And any excess electricity that's generated gets exported to the national grid. A couple of other things to mention locally. There's a number of community benefit grants, and we've done things like energy efficiency, so LED lighting in schools or PV and battery storages for village halls, that sort of thing. It's not a community energy share offer as such because the finances don't stack up with a lot of these smaller projects. But it's good to be able to do them in a community benefit and try to get that energy efficiency and renewable energy very much at a local level. I'm very mindful that we are just scratching the surface. Look, we are two organisations, Harbour Energy and Green Fox Community Energy. You know, we can only do so much, and we've been operating since 2012, 2015, and we haven't really done as much. And especially when you look at other areas and what they are doing with community energy. So we want to significantly raise that capacity and deliver. So how do we actually do that? So let me talk a little bit about the GreenerFuture project, because it came out of really the idea that, look, when the county council are trying to deliver net zero, they've got no money. You know, they're really struggling. All local authorities are really struggling. So how do they make it happen? And then you've got community energy organizations that can bring in that money but don't have the capacity to deliver it. So those are the two sort of problems we were trying to solve. And so Leicestershire County Council, together with Green Fox and all the partners on the right hand of your screen there, and there are quite a few, and they all play an important part in the project, came together and we applied for Innovate UK money to look at the barriers that are stopping delivery of net zero in the county. And it's not just the capacity for community energy, but it's also the internal barriers within the county council and other organisations that are stopping the development. These barriers could be sort of siloed working, it could be procurement, it could be leadership, and obviously there's the question of money. We were successful with the application to Innovate UK, and although we've changed our name at the top of the screen, you can see that catchy name, Leicestershire Collaborate to Accelerate Net Zero. So we quickly changed that to GreenerFuture, and we're up and running, and we started in March, and we've got to November 2025. We applied for 2.55 million, and that's what they gave us. But it's quite a tight turnaround on what we've got to achieve. So what we wanted to do in a community energy point of view, we wanted to build on capacity, and we were clear on that. And we wanted to use the community energy pathways that Community Energy South are operating, because that is a clear pathway. It is something that's been tested before in other areas, and it allows community energy to grow in small groups around a specific area. And then we wanted to identify a pipeline of projects. So by doing this project, by taking part of the project, we wanted to try and identify projects that we could deliver. So how do we do this? So we do this through a local area energy plan. And it's known as a LAPE for short. So I might be using that jargon as we go through. And how does it help? So the Energy Systems Catapult are one of our partners, and many of the local authorities, it says 82% here of local authorities in England and Wales, have declared a climate emergency. But actually, what does that mean? They've declared it, but what do they do? Especially when they haven't got any money. So the Energy Systems Catapult has come up with this plan, if you like, which then allows the local authority to have sight of what they've actually got to do. The local area energy plan is delivered by the Energy Systems Catapult, independent research and technology organisation, and set up by the UK government, and it's specifically there to accelerate and transform the UK's energy system. So I want to just talk a little bit more about the local area energy plan and how it helps. Okay, so I've said it's developed by the Catapult, and it's really about changes that are needed to bring about the carbon savings that are needed by 2020, well, by 2050. It models heat and power demands and analyzes evolving energy consumption, such as the impact of transport electrification and knock-on effect of the electricity network. That may be one area they look at. It includes the cost of reaching net zero and financial analysis that goes with it. For instance, it may cost X amount million to install residential heat pumps in Charnwood, for instance, or it might X million to put energy efficiency in Lutterworth. You know, so it's exploring the cost of it and gives some ideas to how that can be achieved. It also identifies grid constraints. So if we're looking for larger community energy projects like solar farms or wind, battery storage, we can link in with where those grid opportunities are. The local area energy plan gives I can't say this word, no, I still can't say it. Let me have another go. It gives a lot of detail, granularity. There we go, nearly got it. And it does that by going down not only to county level, but it goes to district level, it goes to parish council level, but it also goes to street level. So all of you on this seminar, all of you on this webinar now will be able to see your house on the plan, which makes it personal straight away, and it makes it interesting because you might be looking at a project that might be in a particular street, or there might be a problem in a particular area, and you can have an overview of that energy in that area. So for instance, it might be the best homes to retrofit in your area, or the best homes to put solar on, and it enables a focus on place. And helps understand the opportunities to deploy at scale rather than individuals. And as I say, it covers the district, the parishes and the villages and everything. So we're trying to look at it also from not just a very local, but we're looking at it from the 3 tiers of government. So you've got parish councils, district councils and the county council all involved. So what will the local area energy plan provide for community energy? Okay, so the most important thing for us is an easy, understandable set of clear, meaningful and addressable actions. It's all about being practical. It's specifically for this project, the local area energy plan will identify a pipeline of projects across the county to be developed by community energy. And that's really exciting because it's helping us again with capacity. It's helping us deliver projects that we know are there and have the technical ability to do through this work. The projects could be retrofit, it could be heat networks, renewable energy such as solar PV, wind turbines I've mentioned, energy efficiency, battery storage, those sorts of things. That's just a small list, but there could be other things. Early findings from the local area energy plan will come to light in the back end of this year, with a completed plan being delivered in 2025. So due to the timescales of the project, there will be some focus on solar PV as the financial model is well developed through community energy organisations, and we can deliver some early wins through the project. However, saying that, we need to be place-based, really important, and deliver the best type of projects for communities in their own areas to have the maximum impact. So in preparation for the pipeline of projects, we've been doing a little bit of work, as you would expect, behind the scenes, because we started in March, and I'd like to share those with you. So we've been scoping out, been meeting with stakeholders, district councils, county councils, the universities, to understand the potential for partnerships. We've engaged with parish councils and also the National Grid at an early stage, as they're one of the partners in the project. And we've not wanted to duplicate work that other people are doing. And in fact, we're wanting to enhance that work wherever possible. So you may have work within your own areas that this project could help with. Good example of that, we're working with the Warm Homes team at the County Council to look at powering up and powering down projects. So your powering up again is your increase of renewables, but your powering down projects, energy efficiency, and supporting and building on existing activity. We've applied and managed to get some community energy fund money, and we've started to survey 260 schools across the county for the potential to install solar PV. And that's really interesting because there will be schools in your areas that we're wanting to try and develop, and your help would be really appreciated with that. We're already working strongly with schools in Hinckley and Harborough to install solar PV, and hopefully the school in Hinckley will be ready to go out to share offer hopefully in the next few months. We've done some initial financial modelling to deliver larger renewable energy projects such as solar farms and wind turbines, but we would like more. So again, you may know of projects out there that we could look at. So how can you help? Okay, so when we put in the bid, we were looking at capacity building for community energy. And ideally, we were saying, well, it would be great, wouldn't it, if we had groups in every district, but actually we want to be a little bit more flexible than that. The group may be made up of unconnected individuals that are coming together. It might be in an existing group that wants to take on community energy. It might be several groups that come together in a sort of like a consortium in an area. It really depends on what people are interested in doing and what they have in mind. Also, it might be the case that somebody's specifically interested, for instance, in a wind project, but wind isn't happening in their area. So they may get interested in a project that might not be so place-based to them, but that's what they're interested in. And that in itself is really interesting. Local projects, ideally, we would like to see a couple of local projects in each district, if that's possible. However, we'll see how we get on. And we, Community Energy South and Green Fox, can provide all sorts of help. And this is one of the ways that we can try and build up community energy in Leicestershire by providing training, mentoring, help with developing projects. resources and access to funding. We've already accessed money from the Community Energy Fund, so I'm sure we can access further money and some money within this project that we have as well. We can offer networking, expertise and support to you. So that's a little bit about about the project, about Green Fox, what's happening locally and how you can help. So at that stage, I will stop sharing and then I can see you all again, which is rather good. And I would like to talk to you about the next steps. Everybody has provided an email, so you'll be able to sign up for the email list and the sessions and activities. However, before we do all of that and I go on to that, it would be really good to have a question and answer session.
Ben,
So,
sorry,
yes,
can I just
Sarah.
interrupt? Laura's going to do a presentation on the survey.
Of course she is. Thank you for reminding me. All yours, Laura.
Just unmute myself. Thanks, Ben. I'll just share my screen again. Bear with me while I flick through to the right slide. So you may have seen as part of the invite to this webinar that there was a survey attached where we were sort of asking people about their community, their community group, what they were doing in their community, but also to find out a bit more about what they might want to do regarding community energy in their area. So I'm just going to run through the findings of that, just as sort of basis of a discussion really that we can have about next steps, as Ben said. Can everybody see that? I'll just put it onto presenting mode. So as Ben mentioned, one approach for this programme might be sort of clustering people together who are from a similar area. Potentially we might look to develop sort of a community energy group or programme in each district. So we do have a relatively good spread from across the county. There's sort of a slightly deserty area just below Ashby. I'm not sure if that still falls within northwest Leicestershire. And similarly, sort of northeast, there might be sort of fewer community groups that have come forward. But generally, it's encouraging to see that we had a relatively good spread. So that gives us a really good starting point to think how we can sort of maybe start clustering people together. And when asked, are you interested in being involved in community energy? No one said no, which is great. And I assume if they had said no, they wouldn't have filled it in anyway. So maybe it's a bit of a big question. But on the whole, very positive. People are interested. And hopefully after today, you've heard a bit more about what we're doing. The people who are in possibly will come to Green. And when asked the sort of barriers to delivering energy projects, community energy projects in your area, funding seems to have been cited as the most significant barrier, as well as a lack of capacity and a lack of volunteers. I wouldn't say that's encouraging, but through this programme, we sort of have means to address all that. I think there is a certain amount of funding that we have for individual groups to help kickstart them and projects. As we've discussed, a key part of this project is to help engage more people, provide skills and training and build capacity within groups. So hopefully through this programme, GreenerFuture, these barriers can be overcome. Most respondents said they were either interested or possibly interested in delivering community energy advice. We talked about those energy champions and the role of the energy champions and what they can do. There is already a couple of groups doing this, and there is schemes that the county council's delivering, the Hero project, who are quite keen to link with community energy groups to help promote their grant funded schemes. So there is sort of a foundation level of interest, which is great. We provide the skills and training to support that interest. And yes, and possibly yes, people or groups are interested in sort of coming together and being that sort of hub approach that we discussed in Oxfordshire, or having a version of that. So it's a really good starting point for that. And when asked if people have ideas for projects in your area, there was a whole range of suggestions. Energy saving, we've discussed, renewable generation projects, solar on rooftops, solar PV for council buildings, a wind turbine. Well, the news that came out yesterday at Miliband's announcement that planning restrictions would be moved could make that possibility now. Car clubs is obviously something GreenerFuture is already delivering, but there may be potential to grow that into your area, into communities that are here today. Heat pumps is obviously a really important. It's really important that we decarbonise the heating system alongside the electricity system. So, for community energy groups helping support and promote heat pumps is crucial, as for Bohorty or Old Heat as well. Churches is an interesting one, because the Church of England is obviously, you might not know this, but committed to being net zero by 2030, and I think it's scratching its heads on how to do this within the next 6 years. And community groups and communities can be really key to help support churches to do that, as they're so embedded in their community. Parish buildings, insulating parish buildings is obviously, parish councils are key facilitators within their community. So it's great that if any parish councils want to be part of this, that will really help move things along in those communities. And a tree charter. I'm not entirely sure what a tree charter is. If you were the tree charter person, maybe stick your hand up and provide some more information. I'd be intrigued on that one. And that's it. So, Sarah, I'll hand back to you to facilitate a sort of Q&A and discussion.
Yes, thanks for that, Laura. We just wanted to do another little interactive session where everyone on the call today can get a chance just to mention projects that they're interested in. So if you can go back to the poll link and select the second slide, there's a little, there should be a little arrow to navigate to the second slide. Put the link in the chat again. So what community energy projects do you want to do? And feel free to put them again, even if you put them in the survey. We'll just spend 5 or 10 minutes on this. That's great, everybody. I slightly pressed that prematurely, the space bar, but as you can see there, there's some interest around, quite a lot of interest around solar, which is great, and more general energy transition ideas, open to all ideas, which, yeah, we really want people to come with as broad a set of ideas as possible, and really, yeah, giving people, making it feel like a real bottom-up solution is something that we're definitely working towards. And extra things like EV car clubs, which Ben Green Fox is already participating in. That's great, thanks all. Just with all of those ideas in mind, we're ready to open up the Q&A. So I'm just going to go through a couple of Q&As in the chat first. Ben, Herbert had a question about how do I access the plan that you referred to that will show my house?
Hi, Herbert. Yes, the plan that will show your house will be available next year. So there is a time lag. And we are very aware of that time lag. So what we want to do with the Energy Systems Catapult is work with them early doors to try to say to them, right, if we have a number of projects, these are the projects that we would like to do. So they come forward and we can say, look, how can you help us with these projects? So we almost have a heads up and say, so for instance, the person who was wanting to do the wind turbine, we would say, look, here's the wind turbine. Do we have the connection from the national grid? Do we have the wherewithal to develop that project, or is it a non-starter? So there's things like that we'd like to do. We'd like to identify specifically some solar stuff as well, ground-mounted solar. But Herbert, on your own house, just be patient, it's coming.
Okay, next up we have Jelly, who wants to know if the project is open for Leicestershire schools. They're keen to install solar PV on their site.
Okay, that's really good, because I mentioned the survey that we're doing for 260 schools in Leicestershire. So that will no doubt cover your school as well there. And what it is, it's a desktop exercise. So it's looking on Google Maps from above, thinking, right, okay, what are the school buildings that we can put PV on? Is it suitable for PV? And early indications from that survey is there will be just under 200 schools that will be able to take PV. Now that is really exciting. Because and all the statistics are, the project isn't quite finished, but if I share a little bit with you, we're looking at between maybe 4 to 10 megawatts of PV on schools. So it's almost like a solar farm, but on schools, which is brilliant. And we're also looking for people who might want to go into schools and become an ambassador and take education into schools as well. So there is that role. But hopefully your school will be covered in PV shortly.
Okay, next up, would the project also cover insulation for domestic properties alongside renewable energy installation?
Laura, can I pass that one to you? Because you'll probably have more experience of that.
Yeah, I mean, insofar as will it fund insulation for domestic property? No, not directly, but what we would like to see, or what I'm envisaging, is that we can provide training and support for community groups that want to sort of start delivering their own energy advice services. So that training will include a basic overview of energy efficiency measures, including sort of insulation. And it will also provide a background in the sorts of grants and support that people might be entitled to. That will provide sort of free insulation and that kind of thing. There are communities that on a micro scale sort of do bulk buying schemes. So community, villages coming together and all sort of doing collective buying for insulation, that procurement, economies of scale. So it's a bit of a fudgy answer, but not directly, but indirectly we can support the delivery of sort of home insulation by raising energy champions, raising awareness. I would also refer to the and it's not going to happen immediately, and don't want to raise anyone's hopes, but within that GB energy plan there is a commitment to fast track energy efficiency and retrofit measures, and there is funding ring fenced for that. So I mean, it's happened before, and there's kind of a bit of disillusionment about these home energy grants and things, but it has been promised that more support is coming on that front.
Thanks, Laura. Next up, we have a question from John Gilbert. How do you envisage the LEAP will be disseminated down to local authorities and communities?
Good question. So the LEAP is going to be open source. So it will be available on website, the County Council's website, although there will be a particular bespoke website for it as well. But to give us a bit of a heads up and a bit of an advantage, Community Energy are obviously working with the Catapult, so we will have early view of that plan. So hopefully we will be able to pick up some of those projects. Other commercial operators will also be able to see it, so they will also have projects that they wanted to deliver. So we are wanting that to happen. There's no doubt about it. You need all of these stakeholders to deliver on net zero. So it will be an open source document. And as Herbert was wanting to do, you'll be able to zoom down to your house or your school or your village hall or whatever it may be and see where it is and potentially where it could go. So yes, John, very good question.
Now, Darren has also put a response to that in the chat saying that your local council should be involved already. Thanks for that, Darren. And next question we have from Dave Abley. Have you made links with Solar for Schools organisation?
Thanks, Dave. We haven't made links with the Solar for Schools organisation because they're national. And that is the main reason for not doing that. We're wanting to try and keep much of the benefits as local as possible. So if we went for Solar for Schools, they would take those benefits, those monetary benefits, away from the local area. They do some education within schools, which is helpful, but we're really wanting to do it ourselves if we can and build up the community energy sector and get local people involved, whereas it's not quite the same. It is good, but look, it's perhaps not what we're wanting to do now, Dave.
I just add to that, yeah, it is a slightly different flavour of community energy. It doesn't necessarily have that hyper community level and localism that we're really aiming for. It's great for maybe schools who are in an area where there isn't much community energy activity or groups going on, but I think it is a slightly different version of community energy to what we're suggesting.
Thanks, Laura. Another question we have from Councillor Jeff Lawrence. Are you aware that Charnwood Borough Council has revived its council-owned solar farm project by allocating funds to a new feasibility study? Should we as councillors be pressing for this project to be part of the LEAP so can access Community Energy South experience and expertise?
Just a quick question back to Jeff. Is that the Corn solar farm?
I've never heard it Corn being mentioned, Ben. My understanding is it's just on the edge of Loughborough, between Loughborough and Coates. Right,
okay. Well, we are working with the County Council looking at the Corn solar farm and trying to put that into community ownership. And we are currently looking at whether that's viable or not. And we would love to work with you on that and share what we're doing on that and see whether that is possible. It's 10 megawatts, so it's quite a sizable farm. But to give you an idea of how we do that in community energy is really interesting. So thanks, Jeff. This is quite interesting because from a community energy point of view, we might be able to raise about £1 million for something. Okay, but if you're wanting to raise maybe £10 million, just say that as a figure for buying a 10 megawatt solar farm, we would struggle to do that, and we would struggle to be able to have that money up front to buy the solar farm. So what community energy organisations do is we partner up with financial organisations that then will buy the solar farm outright, and then we put it back into a community hands, megawatt by megawatt, you know, or tranche by tranche over time until that whole solar farm is owned by the local community. So there is a question about how much we can raise in terms of community shares or even community bonds and finance. And so there's mechanisms in place that we are already using to be able to bring some of these larger projects to fruition. But I would be very interested in anybody else on the call that knows of solar farms in development, whether whatever stage that may be. It would be nice to know, because it's something that we can look at. Laura,
I just wanted to add to that. I mean, I know that it's most ideal stage to get for the community to get involved in a solar farm is almost before it goes to planning, so you can kind of bake in the community owned element into that planning application. So if anyone has their ear to the ground and know, like Ben said, if that's the ideal time to strike and sort of introduce the concept of community ownership before it goes to planning. And obviously, if community ownership is on the table, it might make people more willing to accept it in their area.
Great. Moving back to the chat, Estelle asks, have parish councils...
Sarah, sorry to interrupt. Dave's got his hand up.
Oh, I was wondering if anybody would put their hands up.
Go on, Dave.
Dave, go ahead and ask your own question.
Yeah, it was just a comment, really. I'm a member of the Westmill wind farm and solar co-ops, which are based in Oxfordshire. They are a member of Low Carbon Hub, and I have been a volunteer guide around the sites for many years. It's been operating since 2008, but it's a really great reference point to see what is possible, really, and the encouragement people to go and visit. So particularly if people are not too familiar with the whole process, you know, going on a site visit is really fantastic, and learning from what's been around for a number of years. There's also a virtual tour that I can deliver, you know, via Zoom, just to get people thinking about things. But there's nothing like going to an actual visit. But it's something that we offer as an organisation. There's a charity link with both the sites and works with the sites, or I can do it, you know, on a bespoke basis as well. So it might be of use to get people talking and get people a bit more knowledgeable about what has happened previously and what could happen in the future.
Dave, that's a lovely offer. I'm a member of the Solar and the Wind Cooperative too, and I've never been. For my sins, I've never been. So I would like to take you up on that offer, but I'm sure people on the call would like to do that as well. So that's a really kind offer. And that's the sort of networking that we want to try to do within this group, and share, because to see wind turbine, to see the solar farm, there's nothing like touching and feeling, even though that we might be on Zoom. We'll see how we get on, but thank you.
Thanks, guys. Just back to the chat. Estelle's question was, have parish councils already been informed about the LEP?
Yeah, all of the parish councils have been know about it through various ways. So we have done a newsletter to all 182 parish councils through the Parish Council Association and the County Council. We've also sent a survey to those parish councils as well. And then we were at the parish council, the annual parish council event at County Hall, talking about it as well. However, people need to hear about things a few times before they take action. So the more times we can tell people, and certainly through parish councils, it's really important. So yes, Estelle, if there's other ways that we can do it, I'd appreciate your thoughts on that as well.
Thanks, Ben. I'm just going to try and catch up on the questions that we've got remaining. So John Gilbert also asks, what is the view of Green Fox or the CES partnership on larger scale solar development, community or private operators versus more localised rooftop solar schemes?
Laura, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'll go first, if anyone wants to chip in. So it's tricky. I know that there's a lot of in some areas there's a lot of contention around the number of solar farms and the sheer scale that are going in, and I don't want to dismiss anyone's concerns on that, because I think that is real and valid. I think there is need for both. If we are to reach net zero, rooftop solar alone will not allow us to hit our targets. And when sited in the right place, ground-mounted solar certainly has its place in the energy mix that we need to see. I know there's a lot of concern around ground-mounted solar taking up viable farming land, but that isn't necessarily the case. Solar farms, I'm sure there are exceptions, but solar farms tend to be built on low-grade agricultural land, which can coexist alongside things like grazing of sheep, and a well-managed solar farm can really improve the biodiversity of that site as well. So you might be taking an area of low-grade agricultural land and turning it into a sort of a biodiversity haven. So if it's managed well, and community-owned solar farms are often managed better than the sort of large-scale commercial ones, I think there's definitely a place for them. That's not to say that obviously we need a mix of approaches to reaching net zero. So it's my view that, yeah, we need both. From a community energy perspective, the community energy model, whereby you sort of pay back your investors through the sale of electricity, I often get asked, why can't we just site it on large industrial parks and things like that? Well, the answer is it doesn't always stack up from a community energy perspective. Those large industrial warehouses might be unoccupied for certain times of the year. They might not have a high energy consumption. So from that perspective, it doesn't make sense for community energy to do that. So I don't know if you've got anything to add, Ben, around sort of solar farm angle, but there's definitely space for both when managed right.
Yeah, Laura, the only thing I would add to that is that we're working with the county council. They've set a sort of like a best practice guide for biodiversity with solar farms. And that's really interesting. And I won't go into it a huge length, but they are dividing up the land underneath the or segmenting the land underneath the solar farm, which then adds to that biodiversity. And so there's a whole best practice. And of course, we want to try to do that, because at the moment people just say, oh yeah, we'll graze the sheep underneath and that's fine. But we just want to do a little bit more than that if we can with community solar farms. John, I see your hand.
Just quickly coming in on that. I think, yeah, really interesting. Just in terms of like grid capacity in Leicestershire and how big an issue you foresee that being in terms of like getting planning permission on bigger sites, I'd be quite interested to have your take on that.
Yeah, I think there's also a question in the chat around links and connections from the national grid. That's why the national grid are part of the project. We want to prioritise some of the connections for community energy rather than large developers coming in. And so the local area energy plan will focus on where those connections can be. So hopefully we will have first sight of those connections, so we can think about projects to take forward. Yeah, the project in Charnwood already has that connection. But it needs to be connected within a certain time period. So developers can't just hang on to that connection for years and years and years. It has to be developed out. So there's a little bit of urgency with that solar farm to build that out. So it's not just the connection, it's obviously then making that connection and putting the solar farm or the wind turbine there in a specific period of time. Does that answer the question, John?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I think that gives me a bit more clarity. Yeah, I think we're working with various other local authorities across the country, and like in some areas, obviously they've got significant constraints in terms of grid capacity and really long delays in terms of getting planning permission, even for community-based sites. And there's quite a lot of red tape as well surrounding obviously getting community solar projects across the line as well. So it's trying to sort of work through some of those barriers, I suppose.
What I would say is I've recently worked with the National Grid on a small project over in the east of Leicestershire where we put in 2 charge points, and the local substation couldn't take those charge points. So we got that upgraded by talking to the National Grid and saying, look, this is a real issue for us. Can you then move it in your list of things to do, up your priority list? And they did. So although you think, oh, there's nothing to do, by having the National Grid there at quite a senior level, I am hoping we should be able to push in a few doors and certainly try to get things done.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Ben. So I think I'm going to skip over Darren's question then about the substations. I think that if he feels comfortable, it's been covered. And no, okay. Ben, can you respond specifically to Darren's question? When looking at the electrification of heat, is the assessing the sizing of substations and their ability to cope with maximum demand on cold days? Substations are sized to an average maximum demand and not possible demands, so could not cope with every house drawing 1 kilowatt per hour plus on a cold morning.
On a hot morning might be, yeah, switch them off. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing about the car charging points and the use of electricity. Our grid will change. It's not fit for purpose, and it'll be really interesting what the new government actually do with this. So the plan will model that, Darren. It will model what's available, and it will highlight the problems. And then obviously community energy together with National Grid can look at some of those solutions perhaps on how we get around that. So the answer is a good yes. You will get that through the local area energy plan.
Laura.
I just wanted to briefly touch on a programme that we are working on in Essex and in Sussex, where we're looking at sort of decarbonisation plans for rural villages, which is just quite an interesting case study. So it's looking at particularly off gas grid communities, so communities that might be wholly or mostly reliant on oil or LPG, and kind of understanding what would happen to their local grid if they all switched over to EVs and heat pumps, what needs to be done at a community level to reinforce the grid, and also sort of what might the potential be for generating local electricity to support the electrification of the heating system. So there's other flavours of this going on at the moment through other organisations. I know that Centre for Sustainable Energy has been looking at the boroughs of Hammersmith and Fulham, I think, to deliver a similar project. So it obviously is a nut that needs to be cracked in terms of grid reinforcement at a local level, and all the work that's coming in around sort of grid balancing and flexibility services. But yeah, it's not quite there yet, but hopefully it is a fast-moving field. Doesn't really answer your question, I know, Darren, but I don't think anyone's got the answer yet.
Thanks, Laura. I want to get this question from Julia because I think it's a good one. What's the timescale from project conception, launch to installation, and how does this fit with the funding deadline?
Julia, well done. Straight to the point. Excellent. It is challenging. I'm not going to lie. We've got to identify the project, and so, for instance, if a solar installation happened on a district council building, for instance, we would want to identify that they would be willing to do that. We would then have to go through the process of looking at the size of the PV array. We would need to do this structural survey. So there's a few things to do at the start. And we would also need to agree a power purchase agreement with the council, so that therefore the community energy organisation could sell that electricity that's generated through the PV panels to the council. So there's various stages to go through, and then you've got to do the share offer. Okay, so it's not a quick base, it's not a quick thing. And that is why we want more people on the ground trying to identify projects that we can then move forward with. And to be honest, if we don't have all of the projects delivered by November next year, that's technically not a problem, because we will have loads in the pipeline. If everybody on this call did a couple of projects, you know, that's a lot of projects to sort of get through. And that is why the capacity building through Community Energy South and the Pathways programme is so important, because the more heads and hands that we've got, the quicker this will go through. But let me give you another example about a time delay and some of the barriers, because this project is all about trying to knock these barriers down. So, for instance, to get PV on a school, you really need to go to the Department for Education for final sign-off of that school. And you go to, for instance, so we've gone recently, and you go to the Department for Education at a time they are dealing with the concrete rack problem. And so therefore your request to do PV on a school sort of gets pushed down the line a little bit, because some of the other schools are falling apart. So it is difficult. So what we're proposing to do in Leicestershire is talk to the Department for Education, especially through the new government, and say, look, we want to put through maybe 50, 60, 70 schools in quite a dynamic way. How can we do this? How can we streamline that process so we can do that? With the schools at the moment, Julia, we've made progress. So we've already agreed a PPA with the county council. So that legal document is there. So the county council has signed that off for schools. So that's really good. And then we just need agreement from the management of the school, or the trust, as they are as academies, to move forward with it as well. But we will be approaching each school through that desktop survey. If they have got potential for PV on their roof, they will be approached, and they will be invited to take part in the project. So again, local people, knowing that that's happening, can approach the school and help the school and say, look, guys, why don't you get involved? So a long answer to that question, Julia, but it's a good one. You know, it does take time, and it would be great to get some early wins in this project to show how it can do, and maybe the school in Hinckley might be one of those first wins.
It's absolutely. I think one of the biggest, for me, one of the blockers to the development of more community energy is getting buy-in from the actual sites themselves to sort of enter into these partnership arrangements, and the sort of time it takes to develop those is a key blocker. But also for me, it's about establishing a track record, which obviously GreenFox has, and GreenFox supporting other communities across the county will hopefully show that this has worked in Leicestershire before, and it will encourage those sites to sort of partner with community energy, because for some people it'll be an entirely new concept. For some organisations it'll be an entirely new concept and they haven't seen it before. But if you're sort of able to demonstrate it's worked in Leicestershire, it's worked here, it might help get their skates on a bit, speed the process up.
I think we might need to end the chat Q&A there so that we can wrap up on time. There's a couple more questions. I'll gather them from the chat at the end, and then we'll make sure we respond to you all.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, we did say we would finish at 11:30, so it is always good to finish on time. So the next steps, you've all provided your email, so you'll be signed up to a mailing list for future sessions and activities. The email for you guys is info@greenfoxcommunityenergy.org. That's a useful email to have for thoughts and things, especially after this webinar itself. And then we were thinking about letting everybody go on a summer holiday, get the summer holidays out of the way, and reconvene in September. And we'd like to do that on the 17th of September, if that's okay. And Sarah, is there a quick poll just to see whether the morning or afternoon, just try to get an idea when people might be able to come to that next session?
Yeah, so if you just go to the final slide on the Menti poll, you just move on to that last slide. Hopefully you can all see that. There's just a very quick question of mornings or afternoons? And we'll be asking the same question to the evening session we've got tonight. And yes, apologies, I've put evening in the question, but we're going to try and keep it within the working hours, working day. I think mornings are winning.
Clear winner.
Mornings are winning.
Hence,
I mean,
you're all here now.
yeah, that's also, it's also quite good because it's always a bit more sparky in the morning. And so yeah, that sounds good. So that's great. So the last thing I've got to say really is thank you very much indeed for coming. Please be in contact about projects and things and stuff that you'd like to do. We don't have to wait till the 17th of September. In fact, actually, it would be good to have a bit of a list of projects and where people are and what they want to do, and share that at that session on the 17th of September. And as the project goes on, we expect perhaps to meet in person. I mean, the 17th might be in person. We'll see how we get on. But it would be nice then to go around the county in different locations and see what people are doing in those locations as well. And Dave, I'm sure will take you up on that opportunity of a tour around Westmill, and that would be good. So thank you once again. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
All right, cheers. Bye for now. Bye.
Many thanks. Cheers.